What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. A story where Naruto is betrayed and banished. But destiny has bigger plans for him. From exile to emperor, this is the journey of power, strategy, and love. Today's fanfic is titled, What If Naruto Turned His Heartbreak into Love with Ino? Part 2. Okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can't do this. Naruto, stop fidgeting. Your tails keep hitting me and it's getting annoying. Look, all we gotta do is tell my parents and Iruka-sensei and Tsunade-sama that we're demons now and rulers of a vast kingdom. It'll be easy. Naruto just stared at her like she'd grown another head. After much whining, he had finally fallen asleep last night only for reality to hit him like a sledgehammer to the nuts the next morning. He had found a mate and he couldn't be happier, but now he had to inform Tsunade that he wouldn't be around much after the coming year. He'd have to go to his new domain and make decisions and alliances, fight for his people, basically be responsible for everything. The mere thought hurt his head and he began to whine piteously again until Ino whacked him over the head with his notebook that she had been reading again. Seriously, who would have thought his mate would have been into naughty stories? The sound of the door flying open brought both of them out of their stupors and Ino quickly hid the offending notebook from Hikaru's eyes. The blonde and pink-haired boy bounded across the floor and spring-boarded onto the bed, landing in between his father and his new mother, snuggling their tails. The feeling of affection from the nuzzling of her tail brought out motherly instincts in Ino and she grabbed the boy and sat him on her lap, hugging him. Well, good morning sunshine. How was your night? It was good, Miss Ino. I always sleep good when Genmaki is around. That's good. And what did I tell you about calling me Miss Ino? You can call me Mom, okay? Okay, Mom. There. That's better. Now then Naruto, we're going and that's final. We're doing it today because Daddy doesn't have any missions and Mom's not working the flower shop. Iruka can find a substitute and I'm pretty sure Tsunade will cancel any appointments she has to hear this. We're going to see Grandma. Yay. I love visiting Grandma, she always gets me snacks and presents. And she beats up Daddy and they're always funny. Ino an eyebrow and looked at Naruto, who rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Hey. She says I have no respect for authority and she wants her grandson to grow up respectful. I don't know what she's talking about though. I'm respectful, right? Silence greeted him as all parties present. Genmaki had come in after Hikaru and sat at the end of the bed, just gave him incredulous looks. Right. Oh come on. I'm not that bad. And besides that, now I am authority. That doesn't mean you aren't disrespectful, sweetie. In fact, I'd say that you deserve more punishment than Tsunade-sama gives you. She's pretty lenient with you, you know. Yeah, well, you've never been hit by her either. Touché. But I don't think it hurts as bad as you say it does, you big baby. Tell you what, next time she hits you I'll kiss it better. How's that sound? Hikaru, of course, made an EEWWW noise at the notion of kissing that earned him a bonk on the top of his head from his mother. He pouted and crossed his arms, causing Ino to giggle and kiss the top of his head. Now Hikaru, don't be such a baby. It doesn't become you. Go get dressed, we're leaving soon. As soon as the boy was out the door, Genmaki stepped forward for any orders. Naruto finally noticed him and gave him a small smile. Genmaki, I think it's time to retrieve the scroll. We've been dormant as a race for too long. It's time we joined the world of summons. And there are 3 people who will sign right off the bat. Genmaki started to bow low but Naruto leapt off the bed and stopped him by grabbing his head and turning his face back up. Confusion swept over the fox's face until Naruto gave his reason. Genmaki, never bow to me again. I may be king but I have always been a humble person. You have been my most trusted friend and advisor these past 3 years. I consider you my equal and a dear friend. Never bow in front of me. Stand beside me as I rule. Genmaki looked at his ruler with awe. The old Kyuubi had instilled a sense of fear and respect for power during his rule. If you disobeyed or disrespected you died. But now here he was being told that he was seen as an equal and important part of the court. Tears of joy sprang to his eyes and he laughed in happiness. Lord Naruto, you have no idea how happy I am that you are king. Truly we will prosper under you and Lady Ino. I will honor your wishes and I shall never bow before you, but I shall always revere you, my friend. His reward was a genuine smile from Naruto and a rub between the ears. While the two males were enjoying their bonding experience, Ino sat on the bed and watched with pride. This is what made her mate so special. He could befriend anyone, make anyone feel special, make something from nothing. He had that one intangible that made him a good ruler and even greater friend, kindness. Seeing that the two weren't moving and she really wanted to get this over with, she coughed into her hand until they noticed her. With a nod of his head, Genmaki disappeared to retrieve the fox summoning scroll. Naruto stood and stretched, gaining an appreciative eye from Ino. Noticing her eyeing him up, he sauntered over to her side of the bed and leaned in like he was going to kiss her. She closed her eyes and waited until she felt his hand envelop her face, scrunching her cheeks into a pucker. Opening her eyes, she saw a plagueal grin and even more playful glint in his eyes. I think you had enough last night, princess. Now get dressed and we'll do this while my nerve is up. She stood and made towards the closet while Naruto straightened the covers back out. While fluffing the pillows, he found himself wondering what he was forgetting. Suddenly, it came to him. Ino, didn't you hide my notebook under your pillow? A reply of, yeah, came from the deep recesses of the closet. Then why? Well, I can't find it, and if you don't have it then. Hikaru. The procession of the Uzumakis down the streets of Konoha was a spectacle to behold. They turned heads everywhere even though they weren't trying to. It's just when you see three people and a fox, laughing and enjoying the day like a family, it's a little unsettling. Not to mention that they all looked regal. The two adults had an almost ethereal glow about them and warmth was emanating from them. The small boy, riding on the back of a Great Dane-sized fox, was laughing happily. But what stunned most, aside from their attitudes, was the clothing all were wearing. Naruto, much to the delight of women and chagrin of men, was decked out in clothes befitting a man of status. His black slacks were immaculate and fell over his polished leather boots. His shirt of orange silk, still hasn't given up on that ridiculous color, had black flames licking a line across his chest. His battle coat flowed majestically behind him and gave him an aura of power. The Hittite of the Toad Sennin adorned his brow and his smile exuded happiness and his eyes shone with power. His mate walking beside him was the object of much envy and hatred. The women were all still jealous of her for stealing Naruto from bachelorhood, giving them little to no chance to have him, since he seemed so happy with her. The streets were almost flooding with drool from the males of Konoha as she passed by, hanging on the arm of her king. Instead of her normal black shirt and skirt, she had opted to spice things up a little with color. Digging as far into her wardrobe as possible, she had come out with a blood-red skirt, a black shirt emblazoned with a gold-stitched fox, and her shoes were the heeled sandals with fishnet leggings. Her birthday present from Naruto was proudly on display, a royal purple battle coat, fitted to her size, with the kanji for Queen on the back. Her hair pulled back into the familiar ponytail with a diamond scrunchie. Nobody could accuse Naruto of being cheap when it came to his mate, and her Hittite around her waist. They made quite the pair. Hikaru was perhaps the most normally dressed out of the three, even though he too was dressed for success. Decked out in khaki slacks with black sandals and a black button-up shirt with the Konoha leaf symbol in silver thread on the back. He was a very sharply dressed little boy. Genmaki merely plodded along, seemingly oblivious to all the stares they were getting. On the inside he was swearing about having to lug around a heavy Hikaru and wishing they could have just teleported to the Hokage office. But no, Ino wanted to show off her new family and insisted on walking through town. Curse his loyalty to his master, oh thank the stars, they were finally there. Naruto breathed deep before opening the door to Tsunade's office. This was the final plunge, letting everyone dear to him in on his secret. Although now it was more than just his secret, Ino was at risk too. There she sat in all her glory, head on the table, drool coming from her mouth, and her starting to pop slightly out of her top. Ino immediately clapped her hand over Hikaru's eyes lest he see his grandmother's goodies. Naruto was torn between waking her up, an immediate death sentence in Konoha, and leaving and coming back later. Suddenly he heard a low chuckle from one of the high-backed chairs in front of her desk. Slipping quietly up behind it, he peered over the back and saw Jiraiya, his former master, giggling perversely and making notes in his infamous notebook. A wry smile crossed Naruto's face. At least he wouldn't have to look all over for the hermit. 2 birds, 1 stone, and he even got to see the old man put through the wall. Good times. Crossing his arms on the back of the chair, he spoke in a voice loud enough to wake Tsunade. You know, Ero Sennin, I thought I was the author of the books now. Your research really is nothing more than pervertedness. Tsunade immediately shot up and glared at the toad hermit, who began to whimper in fear at his punishment. An arm shot out, a cry rang out, and Jiraiya was embedded in the wall across the room while Tsunade tried to calm herself down. Now standing, her shirt had loosened even more and her ta-tush were spilling out. Ino had to speak up since Naruto's tongue was sufficiently tied, not that it was possible to speak with all the blood rushing to his face. Tsunade-sama, please cover yourself. Tsunade looked down and saw that her girls were bouncing freely and flushed redder than Ino's skirt. Hooking them back into the shirt and straightening herself out, she gave Naruto the evil eye. What the hell are you gawking at, brat? Seeing she wasn't going to get an answer from her stunned son, she turned to Ino and gave an apologetic grin. Finally shaking herself of her blush, she saw Hikaru in Ino's grasp with his eyes covered. She smiled seeing her grandson and opened her arms. What are you waiting for, sweetie? Come give your grandma a hug. Hikaru broke from Ino's grip and ran to Tsunade, who picked him up and enveloped him in a bone-crushing hug. It had been a long time since she had seen him except in passing, and she missed the little boy's bright smile. She sighed in contentment. He was so much like his father when he was younger and wasn't burdened with so much responsibility. She turned back to see Ino, and raised her eyebrow at the kunoichi's attire. If she didn't know better, she was imitating Naruto and looking damn good doing it. Hearing a groan behind her, she hazarded a glance to see Naruto peeling Jiraiya off the wall and helping him back into a chair. Noticing everything was as it should be, she motioned for Naruto and Ino to have a seat while she held Hikaru in her lap. All right, now that the gang's all here, what gives me the honor of seeing you, besides a long overdue visit from my grandson? Naruto took a deep breath and let it out slowly. This was gonna be hard. A squeeze on his hand let him know that Ino was right beside him. Giving her a weak smile, he turned his attention back to Tsunade. Ba-chan, I have a secret to tell you. But not only you, I need to tell those closest to me. Ero Sennin's already here, so that just leaves Iruka-sensei and Shizune-chan. I'd like you to call Ino's parents too, since she's involved in this. I won't say a word until they all get here. What about Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke? Don't you want them here too? Naruto's face darkened and Ino could feel a cold chill at the mention of those names. She was finding out firsthand just how powerful the link between them was. She sent a mental soothing to him and saw him visibly relax. Tsunade, my 2 ex-teammates are definitely out of the question. You know that. As for Kakashi, I don't want him here either. I tried to be forgiving in the past, but the more I think about how he treated me while training me, the more upset and angry I get. True, he showed me the secret behind shadow clones, but beyond that and tree climbing I learned jack shit from him. I haven't spoken to him in years and he's made no effort to speak to me at all. I'm through with him. Tsunade frowned at this but understood. Naruto had tried to forgive and forget, but it takes 2 to tango, and Kakashi wasn't dancing to the same tune. He showed little to no remorse to blatantly favoring Sasuke in the past and even now could be seen hanging out around the future Hokage. She cringed at this thought and her chakra flared just a little, but she snapped out of it when Hikaru pulled one of her pigtails, getting her attention. Yes, little one. What is it? Grandma, You need to get Mama's parents and Aruka-sensei in here soon. Daddy has a big secret and it'll make you laugh. Mama's parents? Do you mean Sa? No. He means Ino's. That'll be explained too. Call Shizune and have her fetch them, then come in here herself. I'll put up a sound barrier. While Shizune was playing messenger girl, Naruto was busy putting up a sound barrier. Ino was chatting with Tsunade about her relationship with Naruto, and Jiraiya was playing with Hikaru while Genmaki watched with a disapproving eye. He liked Jiraiya well enough, it was just that the man's idea of fun was trying to convince Hikaru to yank Tsunade's top off. Hikaru adamantly refused, saying he didn't want to see old lady, and sent Jiraiya into peals of laughter, earning him another trip into the plaster. Finally, after what seemed like eternity, everyone was gathered and chairs were offered. Naruto and Ino declined theirs and stood side by side, holding hands. After greeting Ino's parents, he was on really good terms with them and they adored Hikaru, not having any grandchildren of their own, yet. They hoped Naruto could remedy that. He coughed to get attention and began his story. Okay, so you all know about the Kyuubi. Well, I'm here to tell you the rest of that story. And that's how I became a demon. So any questions? Voices were immediately thrown everywhere. Persistent questions milling in the air until a very loud shout from Tsunade silenced everyone. She glared at them all and noticed that when Naruto said he was not only a demon but the Kyuubi, she had held Hikaru even tighter. She was relieved that the little boy was still human, but was still unsure that Naruto's story was true. Show us. Prove that you are the Kyuubi. Sigh. Ba-chan, I'm still Naruto. Kyuubi is a title. I'm a king of foxes now. And as for proof. He dropped the henge and everyone's jaws hit the floor. Hikaru giggled when he saw their faces and looked up into his grandmother's eyes to see her completely speechless. He leaned up and planted a kiss on her cheek. Daddy looks funny when he's furry. Doesn't he, Grandma? Tsunade snapped out of her stupor and looked down at him with a grin. Well, dear, it's certainly better than the other times I've seen him with tails. Now hop down so I can examine him. Hikaru complied and Tsunade stood before Naruto and grabbed one of his tails harshly, causing him to yelp in pain. Hey, watch it. Those things are sensitive, you know. Be gentle. She nodded and proceeded to pet the tails and moved to his whiskered cheeks, stroking them, causing him to purr. She looked back at Ino's mother and saw a familiar glint in her eyes, one of a need to rub the cute, furry thing. She motioned her over and forced Naruto to his knees so she could examine his ears. Ino's mother, heretofore known as Yuka, for lack of a better name, sidled over and began to scratch an ear while Tsunade scratched the other. A blissful smile came over Naruto's face, his tongue rolled out one side, and his tails wagged happily, some thumping the two women and sending them into giggle fits while the men laughed hard and long. Here before them was a demon lord reduced to a mere pulp at the mere scratch of an ear. Ino laughed in spite of herself, seeing her mate so serene. Then she remembered the second part of their visit. Mom, it's good to see that you accept Naruto as a demon, because that's the second part of our calling you here. As you all know, I've been going out with Naruto for 6 months now and I couldn't be happier. I just recently found out about his being a demon and to tell you the truth I didn't care. I love him. Plain and simple. And now for my part of the secret. With that she dropped her own henge and revealed her royal purple tail and ears. Gasps were heard around the room until they heard Hikaru giggle once again while playing with Ino's tails. Mama looks pretty with a tail, doesn't she? Yuka smiled at the innocence of the little boy. He was a natural icebreaker. Any negative thoughts about Ino's transformation were thrown aside when it was revealed that, yes, Ino was more beautiful with her new appendages. They made her look otherworldly and more goddess-like. She walked to her daughter and along with Inoichi, gave her a hug. Oh sweetie, you do look lovely. Now care to tell us why you have a tail? Thus began Ino's tale of how she became queen of the foxes. Eyes went wide and mouths opened at the tale, and when she told of how she and Naruto were now mates, Yuka threw herself at Naruto and cried into his chest, confusing the young demon. Thank God you two finally got together officially. I thought Ino was never going to get married the way she was going. And now I find out that not only is she married, she's a queen. Calling her princess when she was little seems appropriate now. Of course I expect grandchildren and I'm sure Tsunade-sama wants more as well. Mom, you're babbling. Be still. Now then we have a more pressing matter than grandbabies at the moment. Naruto only has a year left in this plane before he has to go the domain of the foxes and rule there. There are certain things we must accomplish before that. Genmaki. Bring forth the scroll. Genmaki waddled forth with a giant scroll on his back and flipped it into the air, letting it land and unroll with flair before stepping back into the shadows of the room. Tsunade, Jiraiya, Hikaru, and Ino step forth. I have a gift for all of you. This, Tsunade, Hokage of Konohagakure, is the summon scroll for foxes, my gift to Konoha. You four shall be the signers and holders of the scroll until Hikaru comes of age, where it will be passed down through his family through the generations, each becoming the new fox sennin. Hikaru, as my son, you shall be the first to sign. Sign your name in your own blood and put a handprint at the bottom. The rest of you follow him. And so it came that they each signed the scroll, and once done, it rolled shut and poofed out of existence. Naruto smiled at all of them and clapped his hands. Well, now that that part of the business is out of the way, I would like to say thank you to all of you for accepting mine and Ino's love and status as royalty in a demon realm. Now each of you summon a fox. Hikaru, Genmaki is your personal summon, so he won't need to be summoned. He'll be with you forever. Now the rest of you, no seals needed, no chakra needed, this is my gift. A summon without burden. Now do it. 3 cries of, Kuchio's no jutsu, rang out in the office, and with 3 bursts of flame, a yellow fox, a red fox, and a green fox, arrived in the office, bowing low to Naruto and then to Ino. The green fox, larger than the rest and having 4 tails, spoke for the rest. Ah, Lord Naruto, such a pleasant surprise to meet you. I am Jero, the red one is Akane, and the golden one is Azane. We are honored to meet you all, Lord Jiraiya, Lady Tsunade, and of course Queen Ino. How may we serve you? I simply had them call you here to test the contract, Jero. I am happy that you approve of my choice of scroll bearers. My son is partnered to Genmaki. I myself will be the boss summons and shall handle all matters in the human world accordingly if need be. I don't want to put a strain on our people. Hearing Naruto speak with such regal bearing astounded everyone except Ino. It just made her want to ravage him, and he chuckled nervously at their looks. Tsunade was the first to recover. What do you mean, boss summon? Just how powerful are you? Remember that it was my chakra that held the Kyuubi at bay. Since I'm the new Kyuubi and am a fusion of my power and his, that makes me a total of a little over 18 tails of power. Of course 9 is as high as you can go, but I'm the most powerful being alive right now. Too bad I was shut out from being Hokage, huh? No one would ever attack us with a fox demon for a leader with near limitless amounts of chakra. Iruka finally found his voice after absorbing the fact that the boy he thought of as a son was now a summon, the most powerful no less. Naruto, how did all this come to be? Why do you always seem to be in the midst of trouble? Why do you have to leave us? Naruto crossed to the man and enveloped him in a hug. Iruka-sensei, I'm not leaving forever. As a Biju I have the power to come and go as I please in this world. But I have other responsibilities now and I can't ignore them. In a way, I got my wish. I'm a leader and I'm acknowledged. I'm happy. I have a beautiful mate and a wonderful son. You guys are my family. Let Konoha be stupid and resentful of me. When the time comes, I'll still protect them. Let Sasuke be Hokage, I'm something more. I have what his precious master always wanted. And what's that, Naruto? Everlasting life. I'm immortal now, Iruka-sensei. And so is Ino. We'll protect Konoha forever or until we deem them unworthy of our protection. But as long as our family is happy here, we will remain. Shizune came forward and enveloped him in a hug and a kiss on the cheek. I'm happy for you, Naruto-kun. You finally got what your heart desires. And all it cost you was your mortality. I'm proud of you, little brother. Thank you, sister. I love you too. Inoichi and Yuka came next. Naruto, you have no idea how happy I am that my little girl chose you over the Uchiha she used to crush on. Daddy. Now pumpkin, I'm just teasing. Ahem. Naruto, if you ever hurt my little girl, demon or not, I'll castrate you and then kill you, clear. Crystal. Sir. Good. Inoichi slapped him on the back and was surprised to see he didn't budge an inch. Yuka then made her way forward and enveloped him in a motherly hug and whispered in his ear. I want grandbabies by the end of the year or you're dead, mister. Mom. What? How did you? Oh, that's right, super hearing. Now then, what about a wedding? We're already mates by demon law, I don't think we need anything else. I don't think so. My baby girl is getting married in a church and that's final. There's so much to prepare. Invitations, dress, bridesmaids, ooh. And with that squeal the girls launched into a frenzy, leaving the males confused and slightly fearful for the future. Naruto leaned over to Inoichi and whispered in his ear. Hey, this wedding thing isn't going to hurt, is it? I mean, how hard could it be? Ever been kicked in the balls, kid? Yeah, why? It's gonna hurt like that, except forever. Aw damn. The men all cringed at the thought of a wedding and stood forlorn until Naruto turned and went to retrieve his new family. Unbeknownst to him, the older men all had predatory smiles on their faces. Bachelor parties are always so much fun. Getting back home was easier than getting to the Hokage Tower. After inviting her mother and father over for dinner, and threatening Naruto so that he invited the rest of the party, they simply teleported back home and everyone collapsed on the couch. Hikaru, exhausted from playing with the older men all day, was asleep in Ino's arms while she played with his hair, trying to get it to straighten out, which much to her dismay, was like trying to straighten a coiled spring. Naruto was stroking the fur of an exhausted Genmaki. Making that many trips to the Fox domain in one day was tiring even for him. Both Naruto and Ino sighed at the same time and looked lovingly at each other. Let's get these guys to bed and hit the hay. I'm bushed. With that they picked up their respective bundles and made their way forward. After changing Hikaru into his pajamas and flopping Genmaki onto a pillow, they made their way to their bedroom. Not even bothering with bedclothes, they simply fell into bed and wrapped their arms and tails around each other, sighing happily in contentment, too exhausted to do anything strenuous. To Ino it felt so good to just lay there with no expectation of doing anything other than feeling comfortable. It was still an odd feeling, since all the guys before Naruto expected something every night. She smiled into his shoulder and licked his mark, making him shudder. He looked at her with a raised eyebrow. Otherworldly stamina or not, he was still tired. Don't worry, dear, I just wanted to see your reaction. I like making you jump. Keeps you on your toes. Now then, why did you want me to sign the scroll? Because when I leave, you're staying here in the human world. What? I don't think I heard you right. My place is beside you as queen. Your place is here beside Hikaru as his mother. I'm leaving him in your capable hands, and when he enters the academy I want you to be his Junin instructor. I'll help you, of course. And I'll be home every night and at least 2 days a week. This is still my home after all. But Hikaru is human and can't come with us. I need you to take care of him while I can't. He leaned over and bit her mark, earning a sharp breath and lustful moan. Come on, babe. I'll make it worth your while. Ino glared at him for a moment and then smirked. Bloody cheating bastard. That's not fair, biting my mark. What if I bit your? You won't if you know what's good for you. Oh really? Why's that? I outrank you, here and there. You bite me and I'll demote you to, well, damn, you're still a one-tail, so I can't do much there. Ah, I know. I'll make you babysit for all the new fox mothers. That doesn't sound so bad. I like babies. Foxes tend to have litters of up to 4 or more, and there are literally thousands of demonesses in our kingdom. She looked up off his shoulder to see the fox-like grin he was displaying and scowled before biting his neck hard, causing him to moan loud and squirm. Feeling that he was ready for a round, she smirked and rolled over. Good night, dear. I have a headache tonight. You evil little bitch. The silence in the air was deafening until the clink of a dropped fork broke it. Ino stared at her mate and narrowed her eyes in disbelief. What the hell do you mean you don't know anything about weddings? You were married once, weren't you? Head nodded in agreement and others voiced their opinions on the matter. Naruto just sighed and wondered why he had agreed to this dinner date with his new family. Ino's parents were dumbstruck and the looks from Tsunade and the others wasn't helping him any. Putting his hands to his temples he rubbed them trying to make the headache go away. Ino, I was married. That's true. But I never had a wedding. Sakura was pregnant with Hikaru by a couple of months and didn't want to have a wedding. And Tsunade should know this since she was the one who signed the papers. He glared at her pointedly and Tsunade took that moment to knock her sake back and avoid eye contact. Looking away from his mother for the moment, he locked eyes with Ino's parents. Yuka had tears in her eyes and Inoichi had a stupid look on his face. You mean to tell all of us that you have never been in a wedding? Never said vows? Never gotten to eat wedding cake? No. What does it matter anyway? As long as we love one another, what does the wedding matter? A strong wave of fear overcame him at that moment and he saw that all the women were staring at him with intent to kill. His ears lay back on his head and he began to whimper. Inoichi clapped a hand on his back and Jiraiya did the same. Naruto, you don't understand. The wedding isn't for the both of you. It's for Ino. Women have a built-in need to mark what is theirs and a wedding is their way of showing you off and saying, this is mine. Hands off. Sorry kid, but if you don't do it, you die. Naruto sighed and put his head in his hands. Why him? He was Kyuubi, lord of all foxes. Why did he have to do something he didn't want to do? Oh yeah, his mate was evil incarnate and would make his life a living hell. Now he knew why Shikamaru called her troublesome all the time. What the hell did you just say, Naruto? All attention snapped to Ino and quizzical looks were given in her direction. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He hadn't said anything out loud, did he? He turned to Jiraiya and gave him a questioning look. Jiraiya shrugged and looked back at Ino. What do you mean by that? Naruto didn't say anything out loud. Yeah, I only thought that. I didn't speak out loud. Genmaki did say that our link was strong. Let's test drive this. Hey Ino, here's what I plan on doing to you tonight. The only thing they saw was Ino turn blood red and fall out of her chair, a small smile on her face and blood dripping from her nose, her tail wagging happily. After the shock wore off and Yuka and Tsunade had helped Ino back into her chair, she looked at Naruto and blushed again. Naruto just raised his eyebrows and smirked. I thought so. You read my mind and didn't even know it. Did you like my ideas, dear? Quote. I thought so. Now then, it appears that Ino can read my mind. Looks like I won't have any privacy at all for quite some time. Oh well, moving on. No, I have never been in a wedding, I have no idea what to do in one, and I'm pretty much useless at this point. Just plan what you want and tell me what time to show up. Ino looked like she was about to burst into tears. But Naruto, I wanted us to do this together. We have to. It'll be our only wedding and I want your input. We need to pick colors, arrangements. Fine, just make everything you can orange and I'll be good. You know what? You're right. I think between me, Mom, Shizune, and Lady Tsunade we can get the job done. Oh my god, why did I think he would want something other than orange? I heard that. Ino glanced across the table at him with wide eyes. You heard me. Yes, I did. It appears we can converse without actually speaking. A side effect of your family's jutsu, no doubt. Oh really? Well then, allow me to return the favor and tell you what I'm going to do to you on our wedding night. Everyone was looking back and forth from Ino to Naruto since neither had spoken for several minutes. Suddenly, Naruto flushed red and passed out, muttering things about evil and whipped cream. Jiraiya's infamous lecherous grin spread across his face and he immediately figured out what was going on. He smirked at Ino, sending a shiver down her spine. So, care to tell everyone what you and the brat have been telepathically telling each other? I can make several educated guesses, but He never got to finish since Tsunade sent him into the wall and Yuka walked over to kick him in the balls. Shizune would have done something, but all the fun things were taken. She just pouted in her chair. Iruka cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. I believe we were here to have a nice, calm, normal dinner. And also to discuss wedding plans. Please stay on track. I have enough problems being the only adult in a room full of children, don't make me the only adult in a room full of adults. Tsunade stuck her tongue out at him and crossed her arms in a huff. Fine, spoilsport, we'll get back on track. But you have to arrange everything on Naruto's side. Iruka groaned and covered his face. That was brilliant, Iruka. You walked right into that one. Konoha had been a fairly quiet town since Naruto had matured. Sure, there was the occasional prankster that tried to be an upstart, but no one would ever match Uzumaki Naruto for sheer quality. This particular morning, however, was punctuated by high-pitched squeals and several grunts and groans. The reason? The girls Ino, Tsunade, Shizune, and Yuka were dragging the guys Naruto, Iruka, Jiraiya, Inoichi, and unfortunately for him, Hikaru around town to make arrangements for the wedding. Naruto wanted Ichiraku's to cater but was immediately shot down by all the women, and even Ayame refused when she heard about it, citing that a wedding deserved more proper fare, and sent Naruto into whimpers again. Hikaru merely looked around in awe at the whirlwind that was forming around him. His mother was so excited she was nearly hyperventilating and his father was about to have a conniption fit. He didn't know what to think. Ino finally got to the shop she wanted after making everyone taste several wedding cakes, no one complained about that, and picking out invitations and bouquets, could have been done at any time but they were passing her parents' shop so why not? Closing parenthesis. The finest clothing store in Konoha was dead ahead, bringing excited squeals from the women and groans from the men. The girls were excited to try on dresses, the men were ready to bolt in a heartbeat. Even little Hikaru was fidgeting badly. With a, "Let's go," Ino led the charge into the shop. Naruto sighed heavily. He had already been dressed up in no less than 5 tuxes and 13 kimonos. He was tired, he was hungry, and he was starting to get agitated with Jiraiya. The old man seemed to thrive off of seeing the girls in tight-fitting clothes and trying to convince Hikaru to do things to them when they weren't looking. Iruka was off in his own little world and Inoichi was just as excited as the women. It wasn't every day your daughter got married, he reasoned. Ino had finally gotten around to trying on dresses and he wasn't allowed to see her until she had found the perfect one. He groaned, thinking of how much this was going to cost. True, most of the time the bride's parents paid for most, but Naruto was nothing if not self-sufficient. He refused to allow them to shoulder the amount alone. Not like with his book sales, he wouldn't have the money back in a month. And to see Ino happy, it was all worth it. Giggling and cries of, "No, that's not quite right either," rang out for what seemed like hours. Naruto had fallen asleep on a bench and Hikaru had laid out lengthwise on it, with his head resting on his father's leg. Jiraiya had resigned himself to reading a magazine, hoping to see a little cleavage, and Iruka was dozing in a chair. This is the scene Ino walked in on. She looked at Naruto and Hikaru and AWWWED, as did the rest of the troupe. The two of them looked adorable in that position, but Ino had a goal in mind. With a load, ahem, all the men woke up. Naruto barely opened his eyes and cut them in the direction of the noise and closed them again. Realizing what, or rather who, was standing there, they immediately snapped back open and his neck damn near broke trying to swivel to see her. Only one word came to mind when he saw her. Beautiful. Ino blushed and tried to cover her cheeks to hide it, but her mother wrenched her hands away and threw them down to her sides. Ino quickly clasped them in front of her and looked down in embarrassment. She had meant to come out and look extremely for Naruto, but he had blown that out of the water by calling her beautiful. Naruto took his mate's embarrassment that she didn't like the dress and was forced to come out in it. He scowled and stood up. Walking to her, he circled her like a hungry animal and looked at her from every angle. It was a pure white, although her pureness was up for debate in Naruto's mind, and exposed her shoulders. The veil was thrown back behind her head and the train was especially long. It was exquisite. Through with his analysis, he smiled and stood in front of her once again. He lifted her chin up with his fingers so that she looked him in the eye. What do you think? What do you think? Do you like the dress? Yes, I love it. It makes me look radiant, startling, beautiful. You could dress in a burlap sack for all I care and you'd still be the most beautiful woman in the world. A chorus of AWWWS rang out through the shop and the pair jerked around to see everyone staring. Naruto put on his best foxy grin and scratched the back of his head. Well, it's true. Hikaru had woken up at this point and looked at his mother. He his head to one side and gave her a curious glance. Mama, I think you're missing some of the dress. Your shoulders and the top of your are showing. Nobody was able to stand up straight for 15 minutes after laughing so hard. The shopping for bridesmaids' dresses went just as well. The only problem was when they got to Tsunade. She was going to be performing the nuptials, but Naruto insisted that she have a formal kimono for the occasion. Her bust line was the problem because of her rather large assets. The kimono they had settled on made her squeal with happiness. It was made of silk and hugged her body perfectly. And best of all, I don't have to pay for it. Tsunade thought. She could use it for more than the wedding, and if she played her cards right, maybe she could convince her son to buy her a few more sets of clothes. She liked her normal attire well enough, but it pays to be able to impress dignitaries and such. She adjusted herself one more time and stepped out of the dressing room. The silence she walked in on made her nervous. She raised an eyebrow and swept her eyes over the crowd. You don't like it? I thought it was a perfect fit. Jiraiya, unfortunately for him, was the first to offer his thoughts. Damn woman, if I knew you looked that good in a kimono I would have bought some for you years ago. The way they make those girls of yours pop. He never got to finish that sentence since Naruto bashed him over the head, knocking him out. Goddamn pervert. Gotta love him, but he can ruin anything with that mind of his. Naruto turned back to see all the women with angry looks on their faces and Tsunade with her arms crossed over her chest. He decided that discretion would be the better part of valor and hauled the old pervert out of the store by the collar of his shirt. Taking him home gave Naruto a chance to get outside and away from the wedding frenzy in any event. It only took a few minutes to deposit Jiraiya on his couch and then return to the clothing store to find everyone waiting for him. Ino and her mother had already made all the arrangements for clothing and just needed his signature. Inoichi had nearly had a stroke when he saw the price tag and was still in shock, sitting in a chair in the corner. Naruto glanced at the price at the bottom of the paper and shrugged, while walking over to his future father-in-law. He knelt down and whispered in the man's ear. Don't worry about the price. I got you covered. With what I make it's not even a dent, and besides, it's all worth it to see Ino smile. Inoichi grinned and nodded. He thanked whatever gods were above that he had a rich son-in-law. This would definitely make retirement a lot easier. He cracked his neck and stood to face the troop, only to see his daughter fussing over her adopted son. He chuckled and wondered when he'd get to see his own grandchildren. He caught his wife's eyes and they both grinned. We must have been thinking the same thing. He thought. Time flew by very quickly for the little family and the day finally came where wedding bells would be heard. Ino had invited all her friends and family to come out and it was a large gathering. They had opted to have the ceremony on top of the Hokage mountain where there was plenty of room. The Akamichis were chosen to cater and Naruto was basically foaming at the mouth to try some of their barbecue ramen. It was quite famous throughout Konoha. Everything was perfect and nothing could ruin this day. Naruto sighed and looked back to Tsunade. She smiled at him and gave him a peck on the cheek. She couldn't have been more proud of him that day. She wistfully thought back to the days where she planned to be married to Dan. Thinking of him always left a smile on her face. A sad smile, but a smile nonetheless. She looked once more on the men standing on the dais with her. Iruka was the best man and Jiraiya actually looked dignified, if uncomfortable, standing in his formal kimono. Tsunade smirked at this. The old goat should be uncomfortable after foisting his books off on Naruto. Although, the boy does have a knack for the romantic and they're always well written. She admitted with a slight blush. Shaking her head, she continued awaiting the bride. Naruto looked down at his young son and smiled. The boy looked so uncomfortable holding those rings and he hated sitting still. Feeling a pat on his shoulder, he turned his head and gazed at Iruka. Looking further past, he saw a widely grinning Jiraiya. So brat, you ready for this? You really only want one lady? Look across the aisle there. There's plenty more than just Ino, you know. The Toad Senin's remarks got him a sharp elbow in the gut from Iruka, and many raised eyebrows wondering what he could have said to elicit such a reaction from the normally mild schoolteacher. Naruto turned and took in the sight of all his mates' bridesmaids, all dressed in matching kimonos. Hinata and Ten looked lovely as always. His blushing bride was nowhere to be seen at the moment. Removing his eyes from the lovely ladies in front of him, he surveyed the crowd. Everyone was here, it seemed. He smiled at all of his friends until he came to a certain pair. He scowled and his eyes narrowed. He hadn't wanted to invite Sasuke and Sakura, but Tsunade told him it would be in bad taste not to invite the future Hokage, no matter how much everyone may dislike him. He had begrudgingly agreed, but he had hoped they would have the good taste not to show up. So much for that idea. He gritted his teeth when he saw Sasuke with that same self-important smirk he always had, his arm around Sakura's shoulders. She didn't look happy to be there. In fact, she looked downright uncomfortable and hesitant, like she had been drugged there. Oh well, not my problem, thought Naruto. A sudden whirlwind of sand in front of him caught his attention out of the corner of his eyes and his scowl turned to a wide grin. Gaara and his family appeared right in front of the dais. Walking down the steps, Naruto embraced his friend. I see you were able to make it, my brother. I'm happy that you are here. Ah, and hello to you too, Kaoru. I haven't seen you in months. How are you? The little girl paid him no mind, however, and made her way to stand by Hikaru, talking with him animatedly, while the poor boy tried to look for escape. Naruto, Gaara, and Gaara's wife Matsuri laughed at the boy's predicament. Ah, young love. It appears that I won't have to arrange a political marriage after all, Naruto. Kaoru seems quite smitten with your son. She takes after her mother in so many ways. Once she sets her sights on something, she simply won't let go until she gets it, and even then the boy has no hope. He'll end up just like Shikamaru. Now dear, you know that Tamari just has Shikamaru wrapped around her finger. He can't say no or she'll beat him up. Besides, he loves her even if he calls her troublesome. Yes, but look at how Kaoru acts toward Hikaru. I'm telling you, the poor boy doesn't stand a chance. He'll give in, I assure you. All three shared a good laugh at that and carried on their chit-chat until a familiar melody began to play. Gaara gave Naruto a reassuring smile and took his family to their seats. He nearly had to pry Kaoru away from Hikaru but assured her that they could play afterward. Naruto looked toward the screen that was set up so that no one could see the bride and his jaw nearly hit the floor. Escorting his little girl down the aisle was Inoichi with the biggest smile on his face. The girl in question, however, was garnering more looks than anyone. Ino looked straight ahead to her mate. She knew she looked good, but the way everyone was staring at her, she knew she was drop-dead gorgeous. Even Naruto's tongue was hanging out. She never turned her head, but her eyes were scanning the room. She secretly smiled at the turnout until she swept over a pink head and the dark one beside her. She kept up her smile on the outside, but on the inside she was doing a mental wardens. If only Tsunade hadn't made Naruto invite those two. Ah well, nothing they could do about it now. Finally reaching the dais, she turned to her father, who kissed her on her cheek and handed her over to her mate. You look beautiful, Ino. That was enough to bring tears to her eyes, but they still had to go through with vows. Oh, how she wanted this over with. Tsunade stepped forward and coughed to get the couple's attention. We are gathered here today to bring together two souls in holy matrimony. Naruto sat back in his chair at the head of the table by his wife and sighed in happiness. The wedding now over, everyone had moved to take in the excellent food of the Akimichis, and man was it ever good. Naruto himself had knocked back over 10 plates and had drunk a few flasks of sake, not that it affected him. Regular sake was like drinking water, before Ino drug him onto the dance floor and they had shared their first official dance. Now kicked back and trying to regain his breath beside his mate, he watched everyone else. Jiraiya had somehow convinced Tsunade to dance with him and surprisingly enough, the old pervert was behaving admirably. He was also an accomplished ballroom dancer and was impressing Tsunade to a new degree, if the blush on her face was any indication. Anko had Iruka as her partner and was trying her best to make him slip and fall into the valley between her. Naruto sighed and wondered when his father figure would ever get the hint that Anko wanted him badly. Perhaps that was where his cluelessness towards women had come from. His eyes settled on his ex-wife and his former best friend and he gritted his teeth. Ino heard the noise and gave her husband a kiss to settle his nerves. Don't worry about them, Naruto. We have all of eternity to ourselves. Don't let the past consume you just because he's an asshole. Indeed, Naruto. It is only with great misfortune that he has accomplished as much as he has. Gaara, I didn't hear you sneak up on us. Well, I wouldn't be much of a ninja if you heard me sneak up now, would I? Take your eyes off the two lovebirds and look at our children. Naruto and Ino looked over to the corner where they could see Kaoru and Hikaru talking with each other. Hikaru apparently was telling a funny story and Kaoru was laughing up a storm. Other children who were Hikaru's friends were gathered around and watching them with great interest and giving their input. The story finished, Kaoru laughed again and leaned in, giving Hikaru a peck on the cheek, turning the poor boy into a tomato. All the children laughed at him and he hid behind Kaoru's back until his color returned. Gaara turned back to the newlyweds and chuckled. See, I told you that the two were destined to be. Our friendship has spilled over into the new generation, Naruto. And besides, their offspring will be especially strong. Two former Jinchuriki's children should make especially strong children, and I've always wanted to see how strong my grandchildren would be. Add in your strength and we've got shinobi gods. Gaara, I've already told you, leave them be. If you're right, but don't pressure them. They're young yet. Let nature take its course. We found love, didn't we? Why rush to who will find it without a problem? Hikaru has the looks to get any girl he wants and Kaoru the same with boys. Perhaps, but I've always wanted to see how my red-headed grandchildren would look with blonde and pink streaks. Gaara and Matsuri howled with laughter, while Naruto raised his eyebrow and Ino giggled. Ino sighed, wishing the wonderful evening would go on forever. After the wedding they would be going to Suna to enjoy the oases and generally enjoy life for 2 weeks. Hikaru would be staying with Tsunade, much to Tsunade's and his pleasure. She was enjoying the glow of her wedding when she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned up to see Sasuke with that smirk on his face and Sakura behind him with a hangdog look on hers. May I have this dance, Ino? It seems it may be the last time I get to enjoy your company. She gave Naruto a pleading look, but his gaze held fast. His eyes, however, told another story. He didn't want Sasuke touching his wife and that made her heart flutter, but appearances have to be kept. Go ahead, Ino. It would be most unseemly if we denied the future Hokage a simple dance. Just hurry back. I wish to dance with you again. Ino nodded and let Sasuke take her hand. She had a bad feeling about this. He whisked her onto the dance floor while Sakura sat down beside Naruto. Sakura sighed on the inside as she took the chair next to Naruto. She had tried to get her courage up to talk to him many times in the past few months but never seemed to be able to. Finally, she had convinced herself that she could do it at his wedding. Naruto was a naturally forgiving person and never held a grudge, even to his enemies. Stealing her resolve, she took a deep breath. Naruto, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What did you say? I'm sorry for what I did. I left you and Hikaru all alone and I'm sorry for that. I loved you both but I wasn't in love with you. I'm sore. You're years too late for that, Sakura. I don't care anymore. I forgave you long ago but I will never forget the pain you caused. I can never forget what you and Sasuke have done. You broke my heart. Fine, I can live with that. Sasuke stole my dream. Fine, I can live with that. But you abandoned your son, Sakura, for a heartless bastard, and I will never forget that. Don't think I'm the same person you married, Sakura. That man died the night you left. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, reborn. I'm no one's plaything, and my heart and soul belong to Ino now. I am bound to her and she me through more than words in a written contract. We are bound at the soul. I'm happy for you, Naruto. I really am. I just wish that I could undo some of what I've done. Why show remorse now, Sakura? It didn't bother you back then, why should it now? Your inner voice never spoke up to tell you different back then, so no words you say now will put anything right. And as far as Sasuke goes, what the? Why did Ino just slap him? As soon as Sasuke had whisked Ino onto the dance floor, his smirk widened even more. Ino bit her lip and tried not to let him get to her. This was obviously a trick or something. So Ino, how does it feel to be married to a loser and Adobe? I wasn't sure your standards had fallen so low that you would just be with anyone. I thought I still held a place in your heart. You lost any place you might have held in my heart when you left us for the pedophile. I hope he wasn't too rough on you. Or did he eventually have to exchange the stick in your for a whole tree after he reamed you? Sasuke scowled at her verbal jab. He was losing this war of words already, and he wanted to get her good and upset before he handed her back to Naruto. He wanted her to question his humanity and his loyalty. You know the Dobe still loves Sakura. I bet he'd leave you for her in a heartbeat if he could. And for your information, nothing ever came near my ass. Ino smiled sweetly. She was right. This was a way to try to get her to doubt Naruto, and she was now winning the war. No reason to let up now. Well, I'm happy to hear that you're still a virgin there. And as far as Naruto and me, he would never leave me. I'm his queen and he's my king. We're meant to be, bound at the soul. You pathetic little worm, would never understand love on that level, if you've ever understood love at all. So off. Sasuke ground his teeth together. He wanted this bitch upset and quick. No one talked to him that way. No one. The smirk on his face got sickly big and he growled out his words. Well then, if that's the way you want it, when I become Hokage, the first thing I'm going to do is declare the two of you unfit parents and place Hikaru under my care. After he graduates from the academy, I'll send him on the most dangerous mission I can find, and then we'll see how damn smug you are. Ino's reply was a feral growl and a slap that could have disintegrated steel, aimed at his jaw. The festivities immediately came to a halt and Naruto was beside Ino in an instant. What happened? This asshole threatened to take Hikaru away from us when he became Hokage. I merely showed him what I thought of the idea. Tsunade made her way over and tried to establish a form of diplomacy by asking what happened. She was answered with a growl from Naruto that made everyone back up except Ino, who offered her own growl to his. Sasuke simply stood there smirking. Well, Dobe, if you think you can do anything about it, fight me. If you win, I'll leave your family be. But everyone knows you can't defeat me. You never could. You're right, Sasuke. The old Uzumaki Naruto never could have beaten you. He was too kind and forgiving. However, now I have a family to take care of. You are of no consequence anymore. And you have tried to ruin one of the happiest days of my life. I'll never forgive you for that. As for your offer, of course I'll fight you. Tsunade immediately stepped forward. Naruto, think about this. You can't fight the future Hokage, it would look bad. Think of this as my wedding gift to Ino. He has insulted her and I can't let that happen. Honor demands it. Besides, there are plenty of people here who would love to see him taken down a peg or 100. His arrogance knows no bounds. Hatake, I know you're here. Come out of hiding. I saw you in the back. Kakashi stepped forward, his eyes cast toward the ground. It had been years since Naruto had even acknowledged him in public, and now the only reason he called on him was because his favorite student had shamed the idiot of Team 7. He was ashamed of himself, but he never apologized to anyone. Why start now? Looking up, he gazed into the taller blonde's eyes. Yes, Naruto. How can I help you? I want you to referee a match between myself and Uchiha Sasuke. Only stop when one of us is incapacitated. Understand? Understood. But are you both going to fight like that? At that, Sasuke peeled off his kimono, revealing his battle garb. Naruto narrowed his eyes. You planned this. You planned to ruin our wedding day. You bastard. So what? I'm an Uchiha, we do what we please. Besides, it's not like I'm going to get dirty fighting you. Naruto glared back at Kakashi and cracked his knuckles. He turned to all the people and saw them watching in anticipation. Kiba and Lee, of course, were the ones to break the silence. Kick his Naruto. Show him what it means to be an actual ninja. Naruto put on a foxy grin and kissed his wife on the lips before whispering in her ear. Take Hikaru and stand next to Gaara. This could get messy, but it won't take more than 5 minutes. Naruto, you're not going to hurt him too bad, are you? Nah, I'm just going to break a few bones and make sure he can't have any more children. Ino giggled, nodded, and took Hikaru and herself to stand next to Gaara. She smiled at the Kage, who raised an eyebrow. You might want to put up a sand shield every now and then. He's not going to hold back. Tsunade put her hand on Naruto's shoulder and bade him to lean down. He complied and listened to her. Don't hurt him too bad, Naruto. He deserves it, but the council would have your hide for it. Promise me you won't. Go all out. I promise to go no more than 4 tails. He isn't worth more than that. Wish me luck, Ba-chan, and let everyone know that after this the festivities continue. Tsunade nodded and turned to the throng. All right everyone. This match will be underway soon and then we will continue with the party. Hatake. Start when ready. Kakashi coughed and turned to Sasuke and asked if he was ready. He got a nod. He turned to Naruto and saw him still in his kimono. He raised an eyebrow and asked if Naruto was going to fight in that. His response was a snort and a snap of the fingers. Naruto went up in a blaze of fire, causing Kakashi to raise his arms to fend off the heat. When the flames died, Naruto stood there in a black battle gi and black pants with a blood-red sash. On his back was the kanji for Forsaken Samaritan, surrounded by 9 golden foxtails. He wore no shoes, but his feet and ankles were taped, his toes exposed. He wore no hitai but had a bandana with the kanji for bad on it. His wrists and hands were taped and his hair was wild, flowing with the breeze. He appeared as he did in his younger days, blood-red eyes and extended fangs and claws. He had decided to stay human for this exhibition for the most part and not flaunt his demonic form. Ino was slightly disappointed that her husband had decided not to show his beauty. It still got her hot and bothered when he did, but decided it was for the best. Everyone was in awe at the change and whispered that perhaps Sasuke had picked a fight he should not have. Naruto merely rounded on Kakashi, who still had a dumbfounded look on his face. Now we may begin. Kakashi put his hand in the air and lowered it, shouting, "Begin!" before jumping back out of the way. Neither combatant moved, they just stood there analyzing the situation and forming battle plans in their heads. Well, Sasuke was. Naruto was just standing there with his hands by his side, which infuriated Sasuke to no end. How was the idiot planning to fight him if he hadn't taken a stance yet? Something about this just didn't seem right, and knowing about Naruto's unpredictable nature as he did, he opted to activate the Sharingan. If his opponent was going to let his power hang out, then so would he. Kakashi watched all this with wide eyes. Neither man had moved yet and he was already sweating about the outcome. He didn't really want to see either hurt, but knew in his heart that Naruto couldn't win. It just wasn't possible to beat the Sharingan. That's why Naruto was never able to bring Sasuke home. He simply couldn't stand up to the awesomeness of that eye. Sasuke was the elite, a noble, someone who was gifted from birth. Naruto had no finesse, and even though he was of noble blood, you'd never be able to tell it from the way he acted. He had no air of dignity, and even though he worked hard, it just couldn't overcome his deficiencies. It's just too bad. Once Sasuke makes his move, it'll all be over. Poor Naruto. Ino stood on the sidelines practically foaming at the mouth. While she had a link to her mate that allowed them to communicate without fail, Her own powers had been amplified to where she could pick up the subconscious thoughts of others if she concentrated on them. Ino had been picking her way through the crowd, seeing what they thought of the match. 99 of the people wanted Sasuke ground into hamburger meat, but there were a few that simply would not back a demon. The council had somehow gotten wind of the match and had come scurrying like the rats they were to see their precious Rokudaime Hokage beat the snot out of the worthless Uzumaki. Then she had picked up on Kakashi's thoughts and had gone into such a silent rage that she began to shake, and Gaara had to calm her by putting his hand on her shoulder. Unfortunately, Naruto had felt her rage through the link and had asked her what the problem was. "It's nothing, dear, except that your former teacher has decided you don't have a snowball's chance in hell of beating the traitor. I heard him thinking that your hard work would never amount to anything basically. So yet another person who just gives things to the Uchiha. Not like Hatake ever did anything different when we were growing up." What he said was not only an insult to me but also to our friend Lee and his sensei guy. I will not stand for this. Please, don't interrupt me in this fight, Ino. I want to show them my true power. Of course, Naruto. Have fun and hurry up. We never got to have another dance. Sasuke stared at Naruto wondering what the hell was going on. He had seen the blonde stiffen in one instance, then relax, and now he was chuckling. What the hell was going on in his head? Was the fox cracking jokes now? Perhaps a trip inside with Tsukuyomi would be appropriate. Suddenly the deep voice of Naruto boomed out over the mountain. "Tsunade, I'm afraid I won't be able to keep my promise to you about this battle. It seems that certain former teachers believe that a genius can overcome hard work, and I will not stand for that. Lee, I'm dedicating this to you. The flames of youth shall prevail." He was answered with a loud, "Yush!" from two distinguishable characters in forest green kimonos with orange sashes. Tacky, but suited the wearers to a T. No one could accuse them of being boring, that was for sure. But as their cries of youth rang out, a certain silver-haired Junin was looking wide-eyed at a certain blonde, wondering how he had found out what he was thinking. Tsunade was beside herself with worry. She didn't know now what Naruto would do, and she couldn't stop him if she wanted to, and she really didn't want to. Hell, the whole village couldn't stop him even at half power. Murmurs flew throughout the crowd, wondering what he was talking about holding back for. You don't hold back in a fight against a Sharingan wielder. Tired of the constant insults to her mate, Ino shouted above the din. "Shut up. It's starting." Indeed it was. Sasuke had taken back his standard stance and was prepared to lunge forward when Naruto made his first move and took a stance no one recognized. He spread his legs till his feet were away from his body and his knees bent, his body hunched forward. His arms hung limp in front of him, the hands half clenched, the claws razor sharp and ready to slash. Sasuke raised an eyebrow at this absurd stance but shook it off and waited for him to make a move. Even with his Sharingan activated, he never saw Naruto lunge forward and cut his shirt to ribbons, though before appearing back in the position he had been in beforehand. No one saw him move. There was a blur of yellow, an afterimage where he stood, and just a second later, he was back where he started, with the Uchiha's shirt fluttering to the ground in shreds. Jaws slacked at the scene and were immediately followed by smirks when everyone realized that had he wanted to, Naruto could have cut Sasuke to pieces before he could react. Ino was trying to suppress her giggle at the body of the Uchiha. Unlike her husband, whose body was very muscular and tan, the body of Sasuke was that of someone who never had to work for what he had. His body was pale and his muscles undefined, though there was hardly any fat on his body. Tsunade sneered and thought he looked like Orochimaru, while Jiraiya was thinking along the same lines, just not in so kind a manner. Sasuke, however, was livid. The idiot had shown him up once again, in front of a crowd no less. How did you move at a speed that not even the Sharingan could see? It's not possible. Stop relying on that fox and face me like a man. Oh really? Do you have any right to demand how I fight, Hokage-sama? I don't seem to remember you having any morals when we fought at the Valley of the End about using unnatural power. Or is it just the fact that your inner Orochimaru might come out if you lose control? By the way, how is it to have your mind raped every night? Or does he just molest your inner child? Naruto was trying to goad the Uchiha into making a fatal mistake, that mistake being pulling out his Chidori. Feeling he was winning the mental war, Naruto kicked it up a notch with a sneer that would have put Orochimaru himself to shame. Not so fun is it, Uchiha? Having a voice in your head telling you all the time what to do, to let it out, trying to take you over. I've lived with that my whole life and you've only dealt with it a few years. How you coping? Have you begun to break down yet? Feeling the pressure of locking away another soul yet? Does the council know about your predicament? That you hold Konoha's greatest missing nin in your body? Or do they know and just don't care that a traitor and his master can waltz in and take over as Hokage? I'd like some answers soon, Sasuke-kun. That was it. Sasuke snapped and lunged at Naruto, throwing Kaden jutsus everywhere, scorching the ground and causing general mayhem. Several times Gaara had to create a sand shield only for it to shatter like glass from the heat being generated. What surprised people the most though, was that Naruto was bouncing around the battlefield like a little kid on sugar, laughing gleefully the whole time. He had flustered the normally unflappable Uchiha and was enjoying himself immensely. Nothing could bring him down from this high, this elation at messing with Sasuke's head. Well, nothing except a maniacal laugh and some extremely cold words. Uzumaki, if you don't fight me, when I become Hokage I will carry through with my words. I'll take your son from you and send him on dangerous missions. I'll make sure his life is as miserable as yours was. You miserable scum, fight me. Prove that you're worthy of my scorn or your child's life is forfeit. Kukukukuku. Naruto stopped cold in his tracks and caught the fists of the Uchiha and held him firm. His eyes had gone back to blue, the illusion of ferocity gone. Now they were that piercing, frightening blue that could melt your soul. Naruto stared down at the shorter man and spoke with clarity. What did you say? It was a demand more than a question and it made Sasuke pause for a moment. He cut his eyes at the crowd and saw that even among his supporters he had no sympathy. Mess with Naruto, that's fine. But mess with his son and you've opened yourself to a world of pain. Ino was furious and had marched over to Sakura to find out if this is what she thought of Hikaru also. Before she could start a rant however, she found the pink-haired woman in tears, sobbing frantically. She kept muttering the words, evil, and, no, not Hikaru, over and over. It seems her husband was not the saint everyone made him out to be. And he had threatened her son no less. Sakura's eyes hardened and she jumped to her feet, shocking Ino and everyone else with what she shouted. Uchiha Sasuke, if you ever touch my son, husband or not, I will end your existence on this earth. Mark my words, you soulless bastard. Well, that was unexpected. Naruto was musing to himself on the actions of his ex-wife. He may not love her anymore, but one has to admire the conviction of a mother to protect her children, whether she had seen them in recent years or not. He was removed from his daydreaming by the bitter voice of an angry Sasuke. You shut the hell up, woman. I will do as I please, to whom I please. I am an Uchiha and you are mine to do with as I please. Remember who you belong to. Killing intent immediately flared up everywhere at the Uchiha's words, all the women ready to kill him at a moment's notice. Many were former fangirls who couldn't believe that this was what they wanted to be involved with. The rest were men who didn't like any woman to be spoken to disrespectfully. The most intense ones were from all his friends, who he had fought and bled with. The 6 enormous ones were from Ino, Sakura, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Gaara, and surprisingly Hikaru. Sasuke's eyes widened as the killing intent slammed into him and he wilted slightly, before hearing a gasp from the crowd. Hearing slightly labored breathing, he turned his face to stare at a completely feral Naruto, his tails and ears now revealed in all their glory. His fangs were enormous and he literally radiated death. His voice now had a demonic timbre to it. You have threatened my child Uchiha Sasuke. That is unforgivable. You have threatened your mate and have spat on the very ideals of decency that everyone holds dear. I can smell the snake on you, you sick, twisted little man. You will feel my wrath as I break every bone in your body. Your uppance has come, Uchiha. Sasuke could only look on in fear as Naruto raised his fist and plunged it into his chest, shattering his sternum and making him scream in pain. All he got in response was a hoarse laugh from the man standing in front of him. Hurts, doesn't it? Not as bad as a hole in your chest, but it still hurts real bad. Now then, where to strike next? I know. Ino, dear, ask Sakura what bone I should break next, please. I can't decide. There's simply too many choices. Kakashi broke himself out of his stupor long enough to try to reason with what he thought was a Kyuubi-controlled Naruto. Naruto, that's enough. You've made your point. You won. It's over. A low growl answered him, followed by another demonic chuckle that, surprisingly enough, did not make the crowd shudder. After hearing their next Hokage threatened to murder a child, how bad could a demon defending the child's honor and the honor of a woman who hated him be? Most of Naruto's friends were staring in wonder at his transformation, and more than a few females were thinking impure thoughts of how cute he looked and wondering what the tails could do. Ino, hearing these thoughts, turned to the crowd and released her own henge, showing her beautiful ears and tail. Sorry girls, he's all mine. Hands off. Just enjoy the show. It's not every day you get to see a future Hokage have his handed to him. Once again, no one was as shocked as they should have been, but being ninja, you see a lot of weird things in your life. Fox ears and a tail weren't all that weird compared to a guy who could kill you by killing himself and a puppeteer that made puppets out of dead people. This would just require an answer later on. That chuckle had now turned into deep laughter, and all eyes swung back to a hysterical Naruto. I won. It's over. I don't think so, Hatake. This match was over when he threatened my son. This match was over the second he threatened the mother of his children. Konoha, this is your future Hokage. A mentally unstable lunatic. An abuser of women and children. Truly you have fallen far. Now then, Sakura, what bone is next? Ask her, Ino. Well, Sakura, what bone is next? You can't say none because he'll break them all. I know, it's just his way. Pick wisely and hurry. Sakura sat thinking about her choices. She had come to the hard realization that her love for this man died the instant he threatened her son. Hurt her all you want, but leave the children alone. Her anger grew and grew the more she thought, and it manifested itself as a chakra flare that was felt for miles. She slowly stood from her kneeling position and steeled herself, her chin raised in defiance. A sickening smirk crossed her face. Break the one bone that cannot be repaired and will never be used again, especially by me. After your wedding is over, I wish to speak to Ino and yourself, because my marriage to this shell of what a man should be, is over. I'm taking my children and leaving, so he cannot corrupt them with his Uchiha ideology. They will grow to be kind and humble, instead of self-serving and arrogant. Ruin his manhood, Naruto. If I never ask you for anything again, make sure the Uchiha clan of the past dies with him. A slow smile crossed the face of Uzumaki Naruto and changed into an ear-splitting grin. Turning that maniacal grin and mischievous eyes to Sasuke, who was whimpering on the ground, that devilish voice came out one last time. It seems the Uchiha clan you knew dies today, Sasuke. I'll make sure your destructive seed can never soil this land again. You'll be alone till your end days, never loved and never wanted. I'll make sure of that. Now then, how best to remove you from the gene pool? I know, it's perfect. You may want to bite onto something. Naruto knelt down beside Sasuke and began to channel as much Yuki into his hand as he could. While not enough to kill, it was enough to irreversibly damage his reproductive organs beyond repair. His hand hovered just over Sasuke's crotch and red chakra poured from him into the traitor. Sasuke's screams were horrifying. To him it felt as if his innards were being melted and then reformed and then melted again. It was the closest thing to Tsukuyomi you could come to, except the pain was real. Satisfied that his rival was in immense pain, Naruto shuffled so that he could look the Uchiha in the eyes. I wouldn't ever suggest you trying to do anything to my family or my friends, Sasuke, because Hokage or not, I will kill you. You are filth, you are scum, and you and Hatake deserve each other. The council deserves you. Konoha, however, does not deserve a coward, a thief, and a traitor to sit in its most honored of positions of power. I am a self-appointed watcher of Konoha Uchiha. I will be watching your every move, and if you slip up, I'll end your miserable existence and the lives of everyone who worships you. You no longer hold the power you did, Sasuke. You threw it away years ago to pursue a stupid goal of revenge. You threw it all away, and when you came back it was handed back to you on a silver platter. You don't know suffering, Sasuke, but you will, oh you will. Now someone take this garbage to the hospital and away from my wedding. Kakashi stepped forward and placing Sasuke on his shoulder, shunshined out of sight. Naruto stood upright and turned to find himself lip-locked with his wife. Removing his lips from hers, he surveyed the crowd and found many waiting for answers. Well, that's a better sight than what I thought it would be. Least no one's running around screaming, "Demon." Suddenly the small voice of Hinata broke the silence. Naruto-kun, why do you and Ino have fox ears and tails? Numerous agreements were called out and Naruto smiled at his friends and family. He was finally being accepted fully. He wouldn't tell them the whole truth yet, but they deserved to know a half-lie at least. Well, alright. As you all know, I hold the Kyuubi inside me. I've absorbed almost all of his power and it has given me fox-like features. Ino has them because she's my wife and mate, and one night, in a fit of passion, I bit her on the shoulder and she ended up transforming as well. It seems I kinda transferred some Yuki into her system and it changed her. But doesn't she look beautiful with a tail? Everyone had to agree that yes, she did look beautiful. Kiba, of course, had to ruin the moment with one of his astute observations. So you just gave her a demonic venereal disease. Gross. Man, I thought you loved her. I do love her, you freaking moron. And it's not VD. I bit her on her shoulder and gave her some of the Kyuubi's chakra. That's why she has that cool mark. I have the same one where she bit me. See, no biggie. The ones that knew the truth marveled at his ability to lie straight-faced to his friends, but figured it was for the best. Best to let them come to terms with it, one change at a time instead of all at once. His lie told, Naruto placed his arm around Ino's waist and intertwined one of his tails with Ino's. They both looked at Sakura and came to a mental decision. Sakura, go get your children and pack up your things. You're moving into one of the guest houses on our estate. And tonight, we'll be having a talk before we leave for Suna. Now go on. Sakura was at a loss as to what to say. Her former best friend and ex-husband had just offered her hospitality when they had no cause to. She bowed and made her way home to gather up her belongings and children and leave that abomination she called a husband. Naruto and Ino turned to the now sated crowd and hollered out in unison. Come on people, the party ain't over. Let's dance. And dance they did, long into the night. By the time they got home, Naruto and Ino were tired as hell, and basically threw Hikaru into his room. The boy turned shot put nearly missed his bed but was plucked out of the air by Genmaki, who growled at Naruto, who just waved his hand and offered a good night. He and Ino had other matters to attend to, like talking to Sakura and her children and getting them settled into one of the guest houses on the grounds. They walked into the living room where Sakura was sitting on the couch with her two children. She looked up to where they were and offered a small smile. Thank you both for taking us in, and I'm sorry your wedding was ruined. What are you talking about? That was the best gift Naruto could ever give me. I'm just glad you've finally seen him for what he is. Do they know about your decision? Yes. You couldn't really say Sasuke was much of a father beyond an occasional HN. He never really acknowledged that they were his unless they messed up somehow. Then he'd punish them. Life with Sasuke wasn't all that great, truth be told. I was just too much in love to see it. Well, that's in the past now. Look toward the future and build a new life. Now then, I believe there is a young boy that would like to see you in that room. Take your time and we'll look after these two. Oh, and watch out for Genmaki. He's not too fond of you. Don't make any threatening moves toward Hikaru. Let him come to you, don't go to him. Now then, little ones, What are your names? The little boy smiled and spoke up. My name is Jugo and my sister's name is Karen. Naruto raised an eyebrow and looked back at Sakura, who grinned sheepishly and shrugged. Wasn't my idea. He named both of them while I was knocked out in the hospital and signed the papers himself. I didn't want any reminders of his team, and told him so, but I was told to shut my mouth and mind my own business. Geez, Sakura, how did you put up with that for 4 years? Sigh. Very unhappily, I can assure you. My only ray of sunshine was these two. Well, I have a certain pinky blonde to get reacquainted with. If you hear screams, it's because he attacked me. Sakura peeked her head in the door and was met with flashing yellow eyes and a low growl. A shout from Naruto for Genmaki to behave quieted him down, and she entered with caution. Grabbing the chair from Hikaru's desk, she politely asked Genmaki to wake him. The deed done, the small boy sat up and rubbed his eyes, taking in the visage of his guest. Once he realized who it was, his eyes narrowed and his voice turned icy. Hello, Mrs. Uchiha. To what do I owe the honor of your presence? Sakura was taken aback by this. Naruto had really drilled manners into her son's head, but he sounded so cold. Thinking back to how she had just walked out on them, she felt really miserable and his glare wasn't helping. She sighed and looked down, her hair shielding her eyes as the tears began to fall. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry, Hikaru. I'm sorry for leaving you. I'm sorry for being a bad mother. I'm sorry for not being here while you grew up. I'm sorry for everything. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. I know you must hate me and I accept that, but I want to try to be a mother to you again. I know you heard me at the wedding, Hikaru, what I said about my soon-to-be ex-husband. Hey, I'm a failure at everything. I've deprived 3 children of a parent and I'm a failure at love. I had love when I was with you and your father, and I gave it up for a stupid idea that I loved Sasuke. I'm sorry, Hikaru. She could barely squeak out those words before the tears and sobs tore her apart. She sat in the chair and Hikaru watched as the sobs racked her body. He turned to Genmaki for guidance, at a loss as to what to do. Genmaki sighed and took a whiff of the air. Her tears are genuine, Hikaru. If you took the time to train your senses like I asked you to, you would know this. Despite my misgivings, I believe you should reconcile with your mother. I'll be in the other room while you two talk. And as for you, Sakura, don't deceive the boy. I'll know if you hurt him. Sakura nodded dumbly as the fox turned the knob with his tail and walked out, shutting the door behind him. Her eyes widened when she felt a pair of arms around her waist and a weight on her chest. She turned her gaze downward and was met with a shock of blonde and pink, the owner of which was a sobbing little boy. Mama, I missed you so much. Don't leave me alone again, Mama. Sakura smiled and tears of happiness flowed anew. Everything would be all right. In due time, everything would be all right and she'd have happiness again, with a complete family. It seemed they had been in there for hours in that room, crying, relearning everything about each other. Finally crying themselves out, they decided to rejoin the rest of the party. Opening the door to the hall, they walked to the living room and began to giggle at the sight. Sitting on the floor propped up against the couch was Naruto with his head down, Ino with her head in his lap, Genmaki curled up behind him on the couch, and Jugo and Karen curled up beside Ino. What really made Sakura's day was the fact that both Naruto and Ino were in their demon forms and had their tails wrapped around her children like blankets. They looked so warm and comfortable she couldn't help but smile. Unfortunately, before she could feel of Ino's tail, Naruto and Ino both woke at the same time, rousing the children. Karen yawned and looked at Sakura. Look, mommy, her tail is so fluffy and warm. Can I get a tail like that? No, dear, I'm sorry, you can't have a tail like that. Ino and Naruto are special and they're the only ones in the world who have tails. The 2 small children's eyes bugged out when they heard Naruto's name and they turned to him in awe. Naruto. So you're the Dobi mommy told us about. A tick mark formed above his eye and he glared at Sakura, who had the good grace to look embarrassed. Sasuke always used to call you Dobi when he talked about you, and he told them one day that only Dobes eat ramen. I convinced them to go to Ichiraku's with me and told them the story of a certain dobi I used to know and how special he was. I'm sorry if they offended you. No, not at all. Listen, little ones, you shouldn't say things like that about other people. It's mean and not very nice. Understand? They both nodded and then turned their attention to Hikaru, who was still standing by his mother. Karen stood up and wobbled over to where he was and walked around him in a circle. She crooked her finger to get him to bend down, and when he did, she stroked his cheeks, causing him to purr. She giggled at this and proceeded to tug his pink ends, making him yelp. He stood upright again and glared at the now laughing toddler. Hee hee, you're funny. Your whiskers are funny too, and why do you have pink and blonde hair? Sakura bent down and got eye level with all three of her children. Motioning for Jugo to join them, she squatted down behind the two brunettes and pointed at Hikaru. Jugo, Karen, this is Hikaru, your big brother. He's the son of Naruto and me, when I was married to him a long time ago. So he has a tail too. No dear, he doesn't have a tail and he never will. Now why don't you all go play and get to know each other? You're siblings after all. Hikaru was in awe of this and let out a cry of joy. All right, I have a brother and sister. Come on you two, let's go play in my room. Genmaki, come on. Not knowing who Genmaki was, he had snuck into the room while they were all asleep. Jugo and Karen turned to see the small fox walking toward them. Their eyes went wide and Karen immediately glomped him and picked him up. Genmaki was dragged unwillingly back to Hikaru's room, mumbling the whole way about, troublesome kids, and, I'm not a damn babysitter, while his king and queen laughed at him. Eventually they settled down and Sakura dropped the bombshell. All right, I want to know everything. So you two spill. Naruto and Ino sighed and Ino went to make some tea. It was going to be a long night and they were both getting tired of telling the story. The next day saw them all in the Hokage's office, where she graciously signed Sakura's divorce papers and put a restraining order on the Uchiha, barring him from approaching Sakura or her children, or any children for that matter, within 100 feet. She scooped up Hikaru and gave him a kiss and said she would bring him over to play with Jugo and Karen every day. The rest of the day was spent preparing Naruto and Ino for their honeymoon and getting Sakura settled into her guest house, which was huge for just 3 people. Gaara and his family met them at the gates that evening and they began the march to Suna. Kaoru wanted to play with Naruto's tails, which kept swatting her hand away, sending her into giggle fits. Gaara raised an eyebrow at the display but decided to just ask the important questions when they were within the confines of his office. Matsuri admired Ino's tails and ears and secretly wished Gaara had struck a deal with his demon, but then realized that he would more than likely have gone totally insane and killed everyone. Sure, crazy people have the best, but when you have to worry about dying during it, it takes all the fun out. Upon reaching Suna, Ino and Naruto struck out for one of the oases that had a high fence around it to keep out peeping toms, and a small shack for lovebirds. Putting all their things away, Naruto dashed back into town to get dinner, leaving Ino to her own devices. After he left, she got a devilish grin on her face and quickly changed into the most provocative lingerie she had, a see-through blood-red nightie with matching thong. She lit candles and incense and then laid back on the bed to await her husband's arrival. It didn't take long and she heard him put the takeout on the table and start looking for her. Smelling smoke coming from the bedroom, he opened the door wide and was instantly hit in the nose with her scent. Putting on the most alluring look she had, she offered him 2 words. Drop them. What? The biggest shit-eating grin she'd ever had played out over her face and Naruto knew he was screwed, in a good way. Your pants. Drop them. A thoroughly wore-out Naruto eased himself into the hot springs and his aching muscles groaned their thanks. Who knew that his wife would be such an insatiable vixen? Some muscles just weren't meant to be used that much at once. I can hear you thinking you know. Naruto slapped himself on the forehead and groaned out loud. He still couldn't get used to not having any private thoughts. His wife's ability to link their minds was a godsend in some cases and a tortuous exercise on his patience in others. He looked wearily up at her as she slid into the spring beside him and snuggled up against his side. He threw an arm over her shoulder and sighed contentedly. He wouldn't have it any other way. You better damn well not want it any other way. I'm too good to you as it is. You know, I think your brashness has become worse since you became a demon. I ought to wash your mouth out with soap. As your king, I can put you in your place, you know. And you know that as your queen, you'll never see any action for as long as we live. Oh, really? Who do you think could hold out longer? Me, who went for years without intimate contact? Or you who can't seem to get enough of me? Is that a challenge, dear? Because I thought you couldn't get enough of me. Perhaps it's best we drop this before someone gets their feelings hurt. I don't think so, bud. You started the ball rolling and I intend to MMPPPFFF, MPPFFF, She never got to finish what she was saying because Naruto had pulled her into his lap and put his lips to good use. Shutting up Ino before she got irate and things got out of hand. He didn't want an incident like the second night they were there, and she wanted to keep their games going while he just couldn't go anymore. Seriously, his spirit was willing but the flesh was weak and spongy. He just couldn't go on. His exact words as he flopped on the bed were, "Just go on without me. I think I'll just lie here and die." Unfortunately for him, she knew what buttons to push and he had to soldier on, so to speak. Through with quieting her, he released her and sat back while she leaned against his chest. "Hey Naruto, why didn't you come out with us for over 3 years? Didn't anyone try to get you to come out? Or did everyone just stay away?" "No. Shikamaru came by every now and then, but with the way Tamari keeps him busy, I'm surprised he ever found the time. Hinata came by and brought supper over every now and then and told me how Kiba wanted to see me again, but he stayed away knowing I needed my space. Neji and Ten dropped by occasionally. You came by every now and then with Choji. The one who really wouldn't let up was Lee. That guy just kept pestering me until he finally got me to train with him in the backyard. I still wouldn't go out into public, but Lee kept me company and probably kept me sane. Neither of us ever told anyone of our private spars, but Hikaru got a kick out of Lee. It's probably why he's so bubbly all the time. Lee was a good influence on him. Whereas I brought a grounded influence to his life, Lee was always happy and carefree. I owe him a lot. Lee, he was always such a nice person. I wish he could find someone who would be good to him. If only he weren't so eccentric, he could find a good girl. Lee's not eccentric. Once you get him away from Guy, he's actually really down to earth. I might have imitated Guy too if he took as much interest in me as he did Lee. He taught Lee everything, from manners to improving his self-esteem. Guy might be annoying, but if ever there were two people with hearts of gold, it's Lee and Guy. If only Kakashi had been as good a sensei as Guy. No sense worrying about the past, dear. It won't do you any good. Look to the future. You're absolutely right. I need to think about what I'm going to do. How should I repay Lee? You could give him some weights. No, I want to leave him with something to make him stronger. Not just physically but as a ninja as well. What can I do? What can I do? You could let him sign the Toad contract. You won't be able to use it after you take up the throne. And Lee would be a good signer. Yeah, I could let him sign the Toad contract. You're brilliant, Ino. But Lee can't mold chakra. So how to overcome that? Hey, the necklace I won from Tsunade. It gave Yamato the ability to suppress the Biju's chakra, correct? Yeah, so it was made of stone from the demonic realm. What if there was a stone that could help mix spiritual and physical energy to make chakra instead of using your coils? I don't think that's possible, dear. Genmaki already said that necklace was one of a kind, remember? Oh right, I forgot about that. But I want Lee to wield the contract now. It would be perfect. The Toads would love him. Except for the fact that he couldn't exchange sake with Bunta without going crazy. Do you think that the Toads would make an exception for spiritual energy instead? After all, if the snakes can make a demand for sacrifices as well as chakra, then there has to be a loophole as to what they can demand in exchange for help. Maybe, it just might work. No time like the present. Let's find out. And with that, Naruto leapt out of the springs and sprinted off into the desert, Ino hot on his heels. She heard his shout of Kuchio's no jutsu, and a large puff of smoke later, there sat Gamabunta smoking his pipe. Sigh, why am I out in the middle of the desert, brat? What could you possibly want now? Aren't you supposed to be on your honeymoon? And another thing, where the hell are your pants? Do what? Pants? What the hell are you? Oh crap. Deciding he'd already come too far to go back now, Naruto covered himself with his tails and grinned sheepishly back up at Bunta. Well, I was kinda in a rush, anyways, I need to ask you something. Alright, but who's the other blonde? Who? Ino. She's my wife. Why? It was then he turned around and saw Ino, as the day she was born, trying to cover herself with her hands in her tail. Sighing, he drew her in behind him and she pressed herself against his back while his tails covered all her vital areas and tickled her skin. She looked back up at Bunta, who was wearing a lecherous grin, and gave him a shy wave. The giant toad chuckled and gazed back at Naruto. The wife, huh? I don't suppose this has anything to do with her. No, not at the moment. As you know, Bunta, I'm the new Kyuubi, so once I ascend the throne I can't hold the contract anymore. I need to ask your permission on something concerning the contract. Oh, got someone in mind, do you? Are they worthy? More than you'll ever know. He's totally worthy and he likes green. I think him and Gamakichi would get along great. There's only one problem. He can't use chakra. Ah, you're looking for a loophole. Chakra is the main thing that draws us here besides the offering of blood, you know. There aren't many who have the gumption to call us here without another worthwhile offering. What makes him so special? His spirit. He goes all out to defeat his enemies. He's the fastest person I've ever met. He can't use jutsus, but then again, he doesn't need to. I want him to hold the contract because I owe him big time and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. There's more than one way to make a toad flame bomb, you know. Indeed. I take it he is in Konoha. Have I ever met him before? No, but you've met his trainer. One Maida guy. You're serious. I remember the boy now. He's a miniature guy. True. His heart is in the right place, but sometimes he's just as psychotic as Shukaku. Obsessive compulsive with training, huge eyebrows, can't hold his liquor. He's also a total gentleman, respects those who respect him, and would lay his life on the line for his comrades, including your children. All I ask is that you give him a chance. Please, Bunta, make this my last request. His spiritual energy and blood for your contract. I guarantee with as much spirit as the guy has you'll never see the bottom of the barrel. You've piqued my interest, Naruto. Very well, let him sign and call upon his spiritual energy. I'll handle the rest. Now enjoy the rest of your honeymoon. And for Kami's sake, put on some clothes. No one wants to see your sorry excuse for an except your wife, and that's pushing it. Hey, you sorry excuse for a wallet. My Naruto's looks fine, I'll have you know. Ino. Well, it's true. Ha 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 ha. I like her. No doubt I'll like Lee as well. I'll see you two later. And congratulations, Naruto, on everything. Call me to your kingdom when you can. I wish to see you as an equal instead of as a subordinate. You can count on it, Bunta. And thank you for everything. Goodbye, Naruto. And hail the new Kyuubi. With that, Bunta disappeared, leaving Naruto and Ino alone again in the cold desert night. Ino slid in front of Naruto and stood on her tiptoes, giving him a kiss. She leaned against his chest again and sighed happily before whispering, "All hail the new Kyuubi." While Naruto and Ino were indulging themselves in finding new ways to love one another, Sakura was left with the task of rearranging her life. Jugo and Karen had instantly taken a liking to Hikaru and Genmaki, but she found that Hikaru was still distant, even with his emotional outburst her first night back. He was still a little boy and he missed his mother. He remembered her warmth, he remembered her love, and in that moment he was that poor little 4-year-old again. But Sakura had missed nearly half of his life because of a stupid childhood dream, and he didn't accept her fully. Was he happy that she was back in his life? Of course. She was his mother. But she wasn't his mom. That distinction belonged to Ino until she proved otherwise. And even then, Ino had been more of a mother in a little under a year than Sakura had been in his first 4 years. Hikaru loved having a brother and sister. They missed their father, but only as they were used to having him around. Having a brother whom had known the pain of losing a parent helped as Hikaru played with them constantly when Tsunade brought them over. Genmaki watched stoically and tried not to get too attached to the little ankle biters, but it was hard when he'd be lying there and Karen would curl up against him and go to sleep. He'd cover the little girl with his tails like a blanket and she'd snuggle up against him more. Hikaru suggested seeing if his daddy would give Jugo and Karen their own foxes, and Genmaki wasn't averse to the thought. These children were now a part of the Uzumaki household and they needed protection. Especially from their father, who would no doubt be out for blood against Naruto and Ino, and especially Sakura. Sasuke always got what he wanted, but this time there were too many witnesses to save him from being banned from seeing his children or coming within so many feet of the Uzumakis. Tsunade and Sakura chit-chatted while the children played. Tsunade had missed the girl terribly, but she had done Naruto wrong and her loyalties lay with Naruto first. During their first reunion, Sakura had broken down and cried on Tsunade's shoulder while the older woman held her own eyes brimming with tears. It had taken a lot to forgive Sakura, but she would never forget how weak her student was. She partly blamed herself for not beating it into her how stupid she was for still having a place in her heart for Sasuke. The other part blamed Sakura rightly for not having the constitution to be with her rightful family and leaving on a whim. She glanced across the room to see the children playing happily together. She smiled. Perhaps, in the end, all the pain was worth it since Naruto had a way of making everything alright. Tsunade-sama, what do you think about Naruto and Ino? Do you really think they're demons? Is Naruto really the Kyuubi? Sigh, yes, he really is the Kyuubi. But he's not that Kyuubi. Naruto is still Naruto whether he's a demon or human. Technically speaking, the Uzumakis are royalty. Naruto is a king now and Ino is a queen. In truth, Naruto has always been a noble, but he was denied his heritage. Perhaps this is Kami's way of making up for that. To be denied your birthright only to be given a kingdom. It sounds like it's right out of a fairy tale. Yes, it does. You know, when I left Naruto I didn't have a single regret. I didn't have any regrets until Ino confronted me one day and I started to see things in a different light. I realized that there was no love in my life anymore. All I had were my children. I was expected to pump out babies and take care of them until they grew up to wield the Sharingan, and then there's no telling what would have happened to me. I still have nightmares thinking about it. I'm so glad that there are people in the world like Naruto. He may be bitter, but he's not cold even if he has a right to be. That's just his charm, dear. He always puts everyone else before himself. That's why he would have made a great Hokage and why he'll make an even greater king. Speaking of Hokage, what about Sasuke? Surely Konoha doesn't want a child killer as their leader. You forget the majority of Konoha doesn't know about that incident. And while the majority love Naruto over Sasuke, there is no doubt that he is an excellent ninja. I wish there was more I could do, but after Sarutobi-sensei came back into power, he was too old to do everything himself. He had to have help, and thus he gave more power to the council, making the Hokage little more than a general of the troops and taking away his power for important political moves. No doubt with Sasuke, most of that power will be given back because he will demand it. But don't worry too much because Naruto has a contingency plan for the day of Sasuke's inauguration. Really? What is it? Now Sakura, that would spoil the surprise. I don't want you getting ahead of everyone else. Gaara and Matsuri had come to visit the Uzumakis at the spring and decided to stay the night. All were sitting in the spring just enjoying the night air and the warmth of the water. Matsuri was glad to have a night away from Kaoru. The little girl was entirely too energetic. She blamed the influence of Naruto for that and perhaps Tamari. The two blondes were entirely too much alike. Gaara had rid himself of his sand armor for the night, his pale skin seeming to glow like luminescent paint. Matsuri had insisted that Naruto and Ino be in their demon forms as she proclaimed they were just too cute. Gaara had rolled his eyes and laughed at the sight of his wife trying to pet Naruto's tails only to be swatted by the appendages. Naruto apologized profusely. The tails seemed to have a mind of their own, like Gaara's sand. Ino had been happy to see Gaara and Matsuri leave. She liked them well enough, but this was supposed to be her alone time with Naruto. She had finally climbed into the springs after an all-day training session with Naruto and let the water wash over her sore muscles. Naruto had called that light training. Light. Who was he kidding? If not for her demonic form, that training would have killed her. How in the hell did a regular human likely do it? No wonder Naruto wanted the guy to have the contract. He wasn't human, he was superhuman. She groaned when she heard Naruto slip into the water behind her and pull her back to the edge by her waist. She really didn't want to move right now. Why couldn't he leave her alone? You know this link works both ways, right? I heard that. And besides, I believe you'll like what I'm going to do to you. So sit down, shut up, and enjoy. Well, that was a shocker. Naruto was never forceful with her, and she was about to turn around and protest him doing anything to her when his hands began to rub her shoulders, causing her to moan and press further into his back. When did you learn to give a massage? I didn't think you had skilled hands. Ha! Shows what you know. What do you think Ero Sennin and I did all those years, train constantly? Nah, he took me around and showed me to some interesting people. One of them was a masseuse who said I had a lot of promise. She showed me how to give a proper massage to loosen the muscles and the morals. Wait just a damn minute. Uzumaki Naruto, if I find out you some nameless hussy just for massage lessons all. She never got to finish that sentence because Naruto had twisted her head and locked lips with her once again. That was a dirty trick, and yet it worked so well against her. She'd find one of his weaknesses one of these days and she'd have him right where she wanted him. Not likely, babe. And I thought you had me where you wanted me already. Shut up and keep massaging. Let's see if you can get my whole body loose. Naruto grinned and kissed the back of her neck, making her shiver. You seem pretty loose to me, dear. But we'll see if I can make your legs turn to rubber. The honeymoon was over too quickly for their tastes, and soon they were on their way back to Konoha. They were greeted at the gates by smiles of the Chunin guards. All the shinobi had heard about the shame of their future Hokage and couldn't be happier. Word around the campfire was that Naruto had destroyed the Uchiha's manhood permanently, and none of the best medics were willing to heal him. Of course, being a total asshole and alienating one of the Sannin and her two apprentices didn't help Sasuke one bit. He pitched a hissy fit and demanded that they help him, but without any power to back him up. His whining was more like the buzz of an annoying mosquito. The guards at the gate gave Naruto a salute and a cheesy thumbs up, which he promptly returned, making Ino groan and quickly drag his home. They walked in the door and were immediately glommed by an overenthusiastic Hikaru, followed by Jugo and Karen and an extremely happy Tsunade. She loved taking care of Hikaru, but sometimes the boy was too much like his father. She had to have Haruka chase him down after he pulled a few pranks and had tied him to a chair in her office while she did her paperwork. It had been worth it in the end when he had asked her why she didn't use clones to do her paperwork like Daddy did. She had blinked in confusion and asked him what he meant. He had told her that his daddy always used clones to do paperwork, that way he could finish earlier to help him with his ninja training. Tsunade had blinked and then began swearing up a storm, frightening the poor little boy, making him think he had done something wrong. She had confused him further by untying him and hugging him fiercely while swinging him around in circles. All this time the answer to her problems was under her nose and she hadn't seen it. Naruto had died laughing when he heard this. Poor Tsunade had figured out the way to beat the paperwork monster in the twilight of her Hokage career. When asked why he had never told her the secret, he had smiled smugly and told her that she never asked, earning him a one-way ticket to the Sheetrock Express. Ino had to peel her poor mate off the wall and unceremoniously dumped him in their bedroom until he regained consciousness. The adults all began chatting again while poor little Jugo and Karen watched Tsunade in horror. Hikaru had shrugged nonchalantly and went back to playing. Seeing that he was unperturbed by this, Jugo asked him if this was common. Of course it is. Grandma sends Daddy through the wall at least once a week. It's okay though, Daddy's strong so he isn't hurt. He just wobbles around for a while until he can walk straight again. Grandma says it's fun beating up a demon king, and besides, they can't really hurt one another. Demon king? Your daddy's a demon. Yup. He's the king of foxes. Karen took the moment to speak up. Really? Are you a fox, Hikaru? I think you'd be a cute fox. Hey. Nope. I'm just a regular human. I can't do anything fox-like daddy, but he's shown me a lot of other stuff, like how to fight. I can show you guys if you want. Both the little tykes brightened at this. Yay. Show us a jutsu. A really cool jutsu. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I know. I could show you a Kaden jutsu. Ino overheard this with her kitsune ears and growled low, making the other women look at her. Uzumaki Hikaru. Not in my house, you won't. Yikes. Mom's mad. Outside. Quick. A quick scuffle and the three kids were outside, safely being watched over by Genmaki, who never ceased to be amazed at his queen's scary attitude. The kids finally out of earshot and Sakura gone home to prepare lunch for her children, Tsunade decided to get details about the honeymoon. Okay girl, spill. How was it? Was it good? Everything you expected? How big? Tsunade-sama. Please, you're like Naruto's mother. I can't tell you those things. Oh please, I'm not really his mother. More like a distant cousin or something. Pretend for a moment anyways and indulge me. Ino smirked. She'd show the old woman a thing or two. Well, I must say he's larger than I ever thought. Oh my god, Tsunade, his tongue is so long, and it stretched for what seemed like miles. His smile is what got me the most though. His pipe is huge. His pipe, huh? You're using an awful lot of innuendos and, you're not talking about Naruto, are you? Of course not, Jiraiya-sama. Now you'd better wake Tsunade up from that sleeping potion you put in her sake before she gets pissed at you. You dirty old man, you actually think I'd fall for that? I'm psychic, you know. Jiraiya just grinned and put away his notepad. Oh well, it was worth a shot. No hard feelings, right? It was Ino's turn to smile now, although with her kitsune features, the smile was much more feral. No hard feelings at all, Jiraiya-sama. In fact, once I tell Tsunade what happened, I don't think you'll be having hard feelings for quite a while. Jiraiya paled at this and began to back away slowly toward the window. Oh come on, Ino. It was all in good fun. Besides, I don't write books anymore, so you wouldn't have ended up in anything. What'd you say? Look behind you. Jiraiya shut his eyes and whimpered when he heard the sound of knuckles cracking behind him. He tried to make it to the window, but Tsunade's fist was much faster and he went sailing off into the horizon. Ino just sighed and smirked at the heavily breathing Hokage. Shouldn't you two just drop the facade and get together? It's pretty obvious to everyone how you feel about each other, you know. Tsunade just smiled and flipped a pigtail back to its rightful place on her back. Nah, it's much more fun the way we do things. Although I think I get more fun out of it than he does. Now young lady, I want details about your honeymoon. Great, thought Ino, she's just as bad as Jiraiya-sama. Naruto had awoken the next day and went searching for Lee. He found him circling Konoha on his morning run. Pulling in beside him, Naruto began to keep pace and struck up a conversation. So how you doing, Lee? Everything all right? Yush, Naruto. Everything is great. My training is coming along fine and I hope one day to beat you, my most youthful of rivals. It will be a most exciting moment in my ninja career. I hope to see that one day, Lee, but for now I have something to tell you that will make you even more excited. It concerns you in a jutsu. Lee stopped dead cold in his tracks and Naruto had to put on the brakes to go back to him. Lee just looked at him with wide eyes and an open mouth. Me and a jutsu? What do you mean, Naruto? I can't use jutsus, you know that. Ah, but Lee, I know a jutsu that you can use and it is only allowed to be used by one person at a time. Meet me at the training grounds in 5 minutes and lose the weights, they'll only distract you. Yosh. I shall be there. Which training grounds? Mine. Behind my house. We won't be bothered there. 5 minutes later, a very excitable Lee was seen bouncing around the backyard of Naruto's house, confusing the children watching and causing Ino to pinch the bridge of her nose. She hoped that Naruto was right about this. Lee, stop bouncing around and get over here. I need to tell you something. Hi sensei. Don't call me that, Lee. I'm Naruto, I'm your friend. This jutsu is my gift for staying by me during my tough time. Only you can do it and it doesn't require chakra. Doesn't require chakra. Forgive me Naruto, but I don't see how this jutsu can work without chakra. It's just not possible. Naruto softened at this. Lee was smarter than most people knew. He gave Lee the biggest grin he could and offered a trademarked thumbs up and a guy-like speech. Lee, my friend and rival, how many times have you and I proven the impossible is possible? This jutsu normally takes chakra, that is true, but I have found you a loophole that will allow you to do it. Tell me, Lee, can you feel your spiritual power? My spiritual power. When I meditate I can sense it. But no matter how much I meditate I cannot make it mix with my physical power and make chakra. It is a shame, because I have been told by several people I would be a very powerful shinobi if my chakra coils were not so unusable. Lee, I want you to meditate and reach your spiritual power. Unlock it so that you may use it when you wish. Let it flow through you, and when you have attained it, I will show you the jutsu. Lee nodded and sat down cross-legged on the ground. He concentrated hard on his spiritual power and his eyes scrunched in frustration. Unlocking his power was much like opening the gates, except once his spiritual power was unlocked it would be unlocked forever. Lee had heard many things over the years. Dead last, doby, idiot, loser, talentless, incompetent, failure. That last one stung the most. But he had gained friends and they believed in him. He gritted his teeth and thought of Guy Sensei, who never gave up on him. 10-10, though she had been slow to come around, believed in his abilities and trusted him with her life. Neji also trusted him. Then there was Naruto, his admitted rival and friend, who trusted him enough and put enough faith in him to somehow broker a jutsu for him. Not only a jutsu that he alone could use, but one that required no chakra. He would break his barriers and release his power. Naruto was counting on him. That's when he felt the dam beginning to break. Everyone stood by and watched with bated breath. Naruto noticed the first trickles of power leaking from Lee's body and soon the dam burst, a huge wave of spiritual energy washing over the property and sending a sense of fear and yet calm over everyone present. Lee opened his eyes and for the first time in years he felt a sense of empowerment and inner peace. He was ready. He would not let his friend down. Naruto held out a hand and pulled his spandex-wearing friend to his feet. They exchanged grins before Naruto pulled Lee into a bone-crushing hug. That's the only hug you're going to get from me, Lee. You better appreciate it, my friend. Hi Naruto, I do. This means a lot to me. Now then, may I know what the jutsu is? Naruto's grin threatened to split his face open. Lee looked at everyone else and saw similar looks and suddenly he felt elated. This jutsu must be one of a kind. He nearly started bouncing again when Naruto suddenly shouted, Kuchio's no jutsu, and a familiar toad appeared. Gamakichi had a huge scroll in his hands and looked up at Naruto, who was sitting on his head. Is this him, bro? The one you spoke of? Hi, it is. What do you think? With the pressure his spirit puts out, I believe that Pops will be very happy with your choice. I don't mean to interrupt Naruto, but why is Gamakichi here? Naruto ignored Lee and instead pointed at the scroll that was on the ground. Unroll that scroll, Lee, and sign your name in blood, then put your right handprint below it. All right, but I don't see where you're going with this. Lee did as he was told and was surprised by the names on the scroll. As he read further left, his eyes grew wider and wider until he came to a most familiar name. He looked up at Naruto with tears in his eyes and a wide smile on his face. Naruto, my friend, is this what I think it is? Hi, Lee, it is. Congratulations, my friend. You are the new Toad Summoner. Now finish signing your name and summon for the first time. Lee was beside himself. He signed his name with a flourish and put his handprint down and watched as the scroll rolled back up with a snap and disappeared. Gamakichi let Naruto off his head and watched with pride as Naruto helped Lee to his feet. Rise, Lee. You are a summoner now and the toads are your allies. I have asked Gamakichi to be your personal summon since I will no longer be able to be their summoner. But why? I'll tell you one day. For now, know that you are my choice as successor. Now bite your thumb, gather your spiritual energy, and follow my hand seals, then jam your bloody hand into the ground while shouting, Kuchio's no jutsu. Understand? Hi. Lee did as he was asked and jammed his hand into the ground, shouting, Kuchio's no jutsu. He felt the energy spread beneath him and found himself lifting into the air at a rapid pace. His ascension abruptly stopped and he felt a bumpy surface beneath him. He looked down to find himself on top of a giant, pipe-smoking toad. Oi Naruto. Is this little bug on my nose my new summoner? I thought he would be bigger than this. His spiritual power is enormous though, more than making up for a lack of chakra. Tell me your name, boy. My name is Rock Lee, sir. It is an honor to meet the esteemed Gamabunta. I am at your service. Lee bowed while saying this and closed his eyes, not noticing the smile on Gamabunta getting wider and wider. I like him. I like him a lot. He's got much better manners than any of my previous summoners and he's better looking too. Hey you stupid toad. Lee does not look better than me. Did someone say something? Oh look, it's my former summoner. I didn't see you beyond the radiance of this handsome young man on my nose. Surely with one such as him signing the toad contract we will be revered by all. Thank you Gamabunta-sama. I will do my best to live up to your expectations. All right Lee, you can drop the formalities. I am just Bunta to you. You have proven yourself worthy of my people's help and devotion. The Gama family will help the Rock family as long as you all remain loyal to Konoha and your ideals. I look forward to seeing you in the future. Good fortune young one. Gamabunta disappeared after letting Lee off his nose, leaving a beaming Lee and an equally happy Naruto. Gamakichi turned to Lee and told him to summon him sometime before waving bye to everyone, but not before he spoke to Naruto. Hey bro, invite me to your palace soon, okay? I want to see a real king with my own eyes. I shall most certainly do so Gamakichi. I'll see you on the other side. Lee didn't catch the gist of that conversation since he was still in shock. He was a summoner. Yosh. This is the best day of my life. Wait until I tell Guy Sensei about this. Freeze Lee. You can't tell Guy Sensei yet. I haven't officially named you yet. Named me? What do you mean? There was 2 parts to your gift. I'll give you the other soon. Just be sure to be at Sasuke's inauguration no matter what, okay? Now go enjoy yourself Lee. You deserve it. Lee ran forward and enveloped Naruto in another bone-crushing hug. Naruto didn't struggle, he just hugged Lee back, letting the hapless ninja have his moment. Although if he would have activated that damnable sunset genjutsu, Naruto would have killed him there. Lee ran off into the sunset shouting happily all the way. Naruto felt Ino walk up beside him and worm her way under his arm. You're a good man Naruto. How you managed to do so much good with so little is beyond me. You've given Lee a gift no one else could. I'm proud of you. Thank you Ino. You have no idea what those words mean. Unfortunately that moment was ruined when Naruto's stomach growled. Ino scowled at the offending tummy and Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly. Well I can't help it. Working with Lee always gives me an appetite. Hey gang, who's up for some Ichiraku ramen? There were no objections from anyone. Let the king have his moment.